Kate Winslet once said she only cried twice on set. Once during Titanic's sinking scene, and once when Leonardo DiCaprio held her hand behind the camera. They've never called it love, never confirmed the whispers, but after 25 years of red carpets, teary tributes, and secret gestures, something just happened that changed everything. And fans are now convinced this wasn't just a friendship. This was the kind of love that hides in plain sight until it finally reveals itself when no one's looking. Long before the world fell in love with Jack and Rose, something quiet was unfolding behind the scenes. It wasn't red carpets or press junkets. It was a spark that started in a freezing cold studio in Nova Scotia, where a 21-year-old Kate Winslet first met a 22-year-old Leonardo DiCaprio. At that point, Leo had already been through the chaos of Romeo and Juliet. Kate was still fresh off Sense and Sensibility. They were young, gifted, and ambitious, but neither one of them knew that what was about to happen would shape the rest of their lives. Kate has since admitted that she was terrified of Leonardo at first. Not because he was intimidating, but because, in her words, he was too alive. He joked constantly, refused to take himself seriously, and had that boyish mischief in his eyes that could disarm anyone. But behind that charm, Kate noticed something else. A loneliness, a guardedness, and a heart that had already been burned. The very first day on set, while cameras were still being tested and crew members buzzed around nervously, Leo walked over to her, extended a hand, and said simply, "Hi, I'm Leo." She smiled, shook his hand, and in that instant, something shifted. Not dramatically, not with fireworks, but with the kind of quiet recognition that only happens once or twice in a lifetime. Like they already knew each other from somewhere before. But what no one realized back then was that James Cameron had just cast two actors whose connection was so deep, so instinctive, that it would bleed into every frame of Titanic. In fact, Cameron later said that Leo and Kate were the same person in two bodies, that they had a chemistry so raw and unfiltered, it changed the entire tone of the film. And the bond they were building behind the scenes? It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't about fame. It was about survival. Filming Titanic was grueling. Cold water, 20-hour days, tight corsets, technical delays. The studio was constantly threatening to pull the plug. Crew members were getting sick. Everyone was exhausted. And yet, every time Kate wanted to quit, Leo was there. She recalls sitting on the edge of a prop boat in the middle of a soundstage, freezing, shivering, and thinking, "I can't do this." And then Leo walked by, handed her his coat, and said, "I know it's hard, but you're incredible, and you've got this." It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic, but it was steady, present, unshakable, and that's what fans didn't know back then. While the tabloids speculated about celebrity hookups and blockbuster gossip, something much quieter and more powerful was happening behind the scenes. Trust, respect, and something that looked a lot like love, but never dared to name itself. What began that day in 1996 wasn't just a co-star bond. It was the beginning of 25 years of loyalty, private phone calls, unspoken rituals, and a promise they never announced, but never broke. Even when the world begged them to admit it, even when they dated other people, even when their careers took them to opposite corners of the world. Something was always there, and it never really went away. After Titanic shattered box office records and turned them into global icons, Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet were everywhere. Magazine covers, talk shows, paparazzi lenses. Fans and journalists asked the same question over and over: are they together? But the answer, at least publicly, was always no. They laughed it off, brushed it aside, called each other best friends. And for years, the world believed them, or at least pretended to. But behind that story was another one. Far quieter, far more complicated. One built not on headlines or social media posts, but on something rarer. A private promise to never let the chaos of fame ruin what they had found in each other. Because the truth is, their lives were unraveling in different ways. Leo, propelled into superstardom, began living like someone trying to outrun the weight of his own success. He partied, traveled, surrounded himself with beautiful people, fast cars, and fleeting distractions. But even then, those close to him whispered that something was missing, that there was a restlessness he couldn't shake, that no matter how many relationships he had, they never seemed to last. And then there was Kate, navigating a world that wasn't always kind to women in Hollywood. She married young, divorced young, became a mother, took roles that challenged her emotionally, and through it all, she remained grounded. But whenever she spoke about Leo, something changed in her voice. In 2004, while promoting Finding Neverland, Kate was asked in an interview what she missed most about Titanic. She smiled and simply said, "Leo," then paused and added, "He always knew when I needed someone. They didn't see each other every day. Sometimes they went years without appearing in public together. But when they did, it was electric. No awkwardness, no distance, just immediate warmth. Inside jokes, familiar glances." There's a story that Leo's former co-star once shared. A moment during an awards ceremony, when Leo was seated alone at a table. Cameras flashed. Everyone was watching. And then Kate arrived late. She walked straight past the reporters, straight past the crowd, and without hesitation, sat beside him, took his hand, and whispered something only he could hear. He laughed. His shoulders relaxed, and the entire mood shifted. No one ever found out what she said. But it didn't matter, because what mattered was the comfort, the ease, the way they always, without fail, made space for each other, even in rooms full of strangers. When Kate married her second husband, Leo reportedly walked her down the aisle. Not because he was family, not because it was for the cameras, but because he had always been her constant. And even though they never called it love, the world was starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, they were the only two people who knew what it really was. They never needed to explain themselves. They just showed up. A full decade after Titanic, the two reunited on screen for Revolutionary Road, a film about a crumbling marriage between two people trapped in the illusion of a perfect life. Directed by Kate's then-husband, Sam Mendes, the movie was nothing like Titanic. It was raw, bitter, full of unresolved tension and emotional landmines. And watching Leo and Kate together again, older, wiser, more weathered, felt like something more than just a casting reunion. Felt like a reckoning. Because this time, they weren't pretending to fall in love. They were showing what it looked like when love couldn't survive the weight of disappointment. When timing and pain and pride pulled two people apart. Not because they didn't love each other, but because they didn't know how to stay together. Kate later admitted that filming Revolutionary Road was the hardest thing I've ever done. She wasn't just acting alongside Leo. She was unraveling emotionally with him, in a way that blurred the lines between character and reality. She said there were days on set where she couldn't speak afterward. Days when Leo would just sit beside her in silence after a particularly difficult scene. He didn't try to fix it. He didn't try to distract her. He just sat with her pain. And that says more than any headline ever could. Because here's the thing. If you ask anyone who's ever truly loved someone but couldn't be with them, this is what it looks like. It's not always grand gestures or passionate declarations. Sometimes it's just presence. Sometimes it's choosing to walk with someone through the wreckage instead of pretending it isn't there. And during that shoot, something broke open between them. Even though Kate was married at the time, and Leo had long since become Hollywood's eternal bachelor, the energy between them was undeniable. Sam Mendes, her husband and the film's director, later admitted that directing them together was strange and intense. And when the film was released, critics said the chemistry between Leo and Kate felt too real, almost intrusive, like we were watching something we weren't supposed to see. But perhaps the most telling moment came later during awards season. When Kate won the Golden Globe for her performance, she stood on stage trembling. The room was silent. She turned to Leonardo and said, her voice cracking, "Leo, I'm so happy I can stand here and tell you how much I love you. I've loved you for 13 years. I love you with all my heart. I really do." The audience erupted in applause. But Leo just smiled, softly, knowingly, and looked down. He never spoke, but his eyes said everything. And that's the moment fans return to again and again. That raw, unrehearsed confession. The way she dropped every wall, every script, and let the truth out. Because that wasn't acting. That wasn't promotion. That was love. Real. Complicated. Possibly unresolved. But love all the same. Through the decades, Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet have appeared together only sparingly. But when they do, it's never random. It's always meaningful. They don't attend every event in each other's lives. They don't flood social media with birthday messages or red carpet selfies. In fact, they've never done what Hollywood expects of celebrity friendships. And that's exactly what makes their connection feel so much more real. There was the Titanic 3D premiere in 2012. Kate walked the red carpet alone, glowing, nostalgic. When asked where Leo was, she said he couldn't make it, but that he had already texted her that morning, sending her something beautiful to read before she stepped into the spotlight. She never said what it was, only that it made her cry. Then came 2016, when Leo finally won his long-awaited Oscar for The Revenant. The cameras may have been focused on him, but Kate, she was standing just feet away, beaming, teary-eyed, cheering like a proud partner at the finish line of a marathon. They weren't seated together. She wasn't nominated that night. She wasn't even part of the film. And yet she showed up. For him. Later that evening, backstage photos emerged. Kate and Leo embracing tightly, their faces pressed close, her hand on his neck. There was no posing, no smiles for the press. Just two people, lost in a moment of shared pride, like no one else was watching. And again, the world asked, if they're just friends, why does it feel like this? In 2017, Kate revealed in an interview that she and Leo still call each other regularly. Not for headlines, not for gossip, just to talk. She said, I feel so grateful for that friendship. He's my closest friend in the world. But there was something else. Something that fans didn't notice at first. She revealed they sometimes talk about what could have been. Not openly and not often, but it's there. Moments of almost, moments of what if, moments when their voices go quiet on the phone and nothing needs to be said. Because deep down they know. They always knew. Maybe the timing was wrong. Maybe life got in the way. But the connection never left. They never let fame fracture it. Never let distance dilute it. Even when their lives moved in separate directions, they circled back to each other. Like gravity pulling two stars into orbit. And that's the difference between a friendship and something more. Friends support you, but soulmates, they stay. They don't need cameras. They don't need titles. They just show up, over and over, until one day, 25 years later, the rest of the world finally realizes this was never just a movie. For years, Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet's relationship has been a mystery everyone thought they'd figured out. Just friends, they said. A beautiful friendship. But something happened recently. Something that brought all those whispers roaring back louder than ever. It started at a private screening of Titanic, a 25th anniversary event held quietly, without fanfare. Neither Leo nor Kate were listed as official attendees, but they both showed up. Not separately, not with their teams, but together. And what caught people off guard wasn't just the way they arrived, side by side, arm in arm. It was the way they looked at each other during the screening. As the credits rolled, a source who attended said Leo reached for Kate's hand. She didn't pull away. She just held it, silently, as if 25 years had folded into a single moment. And that moment, it was caught on camera, just barely, a blurry image from the back of the theater. But it spread like wildfire across fan pages, because people really saw it for the first time. Not just Jack and Rose, not just co-stars, but something deeper, something lived in, earned. Then, just weeks later, in an interview promoting her latest project, Kate was asked about Leo. It was one of those throwaway questions. Do you still talk to Leo? That she'd answered dozens of times before. But this time she paused. And then she said something that stopped people cold. He's always been my home. I think I knew that from the start. And maybe that's why I never had to say it out loud. The interviewer moved on, but fans didn't. They clipped that moment, replayed it, shared it with captions like, "This is what love looks like," and "She just said everything without saying it." And then, almost as if in response, Leonardo was asked, in a separate interview, what he admired most about Kate after all these years. His answer? "She sees me, the real me, not the actor, not the version everyone thinks I am, just me. And she's never stopped seeing me." He didn't say, "I love her." He didn't need to, because if you've ever loved someone without naming it, without needing to possess it, you recognize what that sounds like. Fans aren't speculating anymore. They're declaring it. This wasn't a friendship with sparks. This was a love story that never asked to be written, because it was already living quietly behind the scenes. And now, after 2 decades, failed relationships, red carpets, awards, tears, and reunions, it's as if they've stopped hiding it. Not through announcements, not through drama, but through presence, through gestures, through the kind of looks that don't need words. And it's why, after 25 years, fans everywhere are saying the same thing. They were always each other's person. And maybe they always will be. There are love stories we watch once and forget. And then there are love stories we feel deep in our bones because they remind us of something we've lived, or something we lost, or something we still hope for. Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet were cast to play Jack and Rose. But what they built off-screen was something no script could have predicted. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't always present. And it certainly didn't follow a Hollywood timeline. But it was real. It was found in the quiet gestures. A coat shared in the cold. A hand held in a dark theater. A knowing smile across a crowded stage. Words whispered only once, when the world wasn't listening. And it was protected in the spaces where cameras don't go. In the years they spent apart but never truly distant. In the loyalty that outlived co-stars, partners, and decades of change. We may never get the love story we imagined. There may never be a wedding or a public reunion or a final scene. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the real love stories aren't the ones that scream for attention. Maybe they're the ones that endure in silence, that choose each other quietly over and over until one day it becomes impossible not to see it. And when Kate looked at Leo that night, when she said he had always been her home, she wasn't acting. She wasn't promoting a film. She was telling the truth. And in that truth, fans finally saw what had been there all along. This wasn't nostalgia. This wasn't make-believe. This was love. The kind that never needed a spotlight to exist. The kind that lasts. For more emotional stories, check out this video.